Almost every day, you'll see a news story about some large, prominent company that has been hacked. And usually, that story also talks about the enormous ransom that the company had to pay to get their data back. Or maybe instead, the story is about how many customers had their data stolen from that company and publicly exposed on the internet. So here are a couple things you might want to think about. Most of us would assume that all of those companies had a high-quality antivirus program. Companies like Home Depot, JP Morgan, and others all have dedicated IT personnel and IT budgets, and they spend lots of money on cybersecurity and cybersecurity planning. So it's safe to say that they would have had sophisticated antivirus on every single computer in their organization. And if that's the case, how did they get hacked? Here's the second question. Because all of the stories that you read are about large, recognizable companies, does that mean that your small to medium-sized business is safe? Well, if you'll forgive me for answering a somewhat rhetorical question, the truth is that smaller companies are even more vulnerable because they don't have the IT budgets of those large corporations. They just don't make the news because they're not as well known, and in many cases, they don't report intrusions. But that doesn't mean that they didn't happen. And that's what we're going to talk about today. How hackers get around your defenses and what you can do about it. Here are a few of the topics we're going to cover today. We're going to talk about how hackers get around your defenses. We're going to talk about how layered or stacked defenses work and how they are really the only effective solution. We're going to explain what a foothold is with a rather graphical demonstration. In the process, you're going to learn the complexity of the cyber threat landscape that we're all facing. The things that you need to do to secure your company's network and computers, how we can help you do that, and absolutely, of course, answers to your questions. Now, before we move into the meat of today's presentation, I want to identify something that we talk about in every single staff and technical meeting, and that is our single highest responsibility to our customers. And specifically, that's the protection of your data. Because if your critical business information is not safe, really nothing else that we can do makes any difference. And that's why ensuring that you have effective backup is so critical. I'm going to talk about that a little bit later in this webinar. Some of you have probably heard this before, but for the people who are less familiar, people who haven't been on one of our webinars, I'd like to start by telling you a little bit about me. Growing up, I was one of those, well, my notes say technology-obsessed kids, but you can think of me as a nerdy kid, that would be fair, who always wanted to know how things work. You know, I was one of the guys who were always fixing the projector in the back of the classroom in high school. Eventually, I trained as a software engineer at the University of Toronto and at York. And while I was still in my final year at York, I started my first business. And by the time I was 30, my partners and I were running a software company with 25 employees. And by age 40, we'd grown to 80 employees with offices in Toronto, Montreal, New York, and Los Angeles. I sold that business back in 1995 and founded Connectability to focus on IT infrastructure because I saw at the time that desktop computers and network computing were going to be the foundation of all future information technology. Over the past 43 years, I've witnessed huge changes in the IT landscape. But the biggest and most significant change that I've seen is the exponential growth of cyber threats. As our businesses become more and more dependent on technology, and particularly cloud services, we also become more vulnerable to negligence and cyber criminals. And that's why we've been presenting these webinars, to help you keep your business data safe and your business running smoothly. Okay, let's get started. Now, I mentioned the term threat landscape a few moments ago, and I just want to give you a very quick overview of the complexity of this problem. That's why I'm sharing this chart with you. Now, Don't worry, I'm not going to go through it line by line and explain to you in boring detail what everything means. I really just want you to understand the scope and the complexity of what we're dealing with at multiple levels of attack and of security. And hackers are constantly devising new methods of attack at all levels of this security pyramid. And that includes threats like viruses, Trojans, and ransomware. Now, according to Canadian Underwriter magazine, and that's a magazine for the insurance industry, Canada has both the highest average cost of ransom, it averages about $8,800 per incident, and the highest average cost of downtime, an average of $66,000 per incident. And if you follow the news, you'll see that organizations as diverse as the University of Calgary, the City of Stratford, Ontario, and more recently a prominent Canadian insurance company have all been hit by ransomware, and at costs ranging from roughly $20,000 from some of the earlier ones to nearly $1 million today. And those ransoms, ones being demanded, are increasing every day. There's also spear phishing and social engineering, attacks that are designed to fool you into disclosing confidential information, or worse, letting a hacker into your company networks. And unfortunately, those are only a few of them. There are more, including footholds, a concept we're going to discuss further today. So how do we protect ourselves from this array of attacks and hackers? Well, a tool that's probably most familiar to all of us is antivirus software. Now, back in the late 1980s, when I got my first home computer, there was no such thing as a computer virus. You didn't have to have antivirus software because there was no antivirus software because there were no viruses. But times have changed, and today, anyone who doesn't have antivirus on their computer is asking for big trouble. And by the way, if you have a Mac and you think you're safe, I want to tell you that Macs have become the fastest growing target of cyber attacks. So just because you're running on Mac doesn't mean you don't need antivirus software. The next layer of security, at least for businesses, is a business-grade internet firewall. If you're simply using the modem that was supplied to you by Bell or Rogers, you're leaving your networks open to attack. Those modems all have pretty well-known vulnerabilities, and a determined hacker can usually compromise them. An effective, properly configured, business-grade firewall can keep direct outside attacks from ever getting into your networks. It's like putting a strong padlock on a heavy wooden door, making it pretty much impossible for someone from the outside to bust in. The third layer of security is what is email filtering. You know, while Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, and others might be the preferred communication tool for kids and millennials, businesses run on email. And email is one of the most vulnerable points of attack in your whole IT infrastructure because there are relatively few restrictions on what you can receive. And that's why many businesses do invest in sophisticated email filtering solutions to ensure that phishing attacks and other forms of deception are blocked before they ever arrive. But in our opinion, the linchpin of all successful cybersecurity strategies is having effective cloud-based backups. And when I say effective, I mean that those backups must be, number one, frequent. That means several times a day. Number two, tested regularly. The worst time to find out that your backups are not working is when you actually need them. So make sure that you do test them regularly, or that your IT provider is doing that for you. Your backups, as I mentioned earlier, they need to be in the cloud as well as having local backup. If you only have local backup, that backup could be compromised by a ransomware attack. And finally, those backups need to provide you with adequate history and retention so you can go back and recover missing data from the time when it went missing. The fact is that an effective backup strategy means that even if you are successfully attacked, you can still mitigate the attack and restore your data without having to pay any ransom. However, and this is important, that said, even once you get your data back, if the hacker managed to steal confidential information, you could still be in a world of trouble. And that's why successfully blocking attacks is every bit as important as having effective backup. Which is why we keep adding more defensive weapons to our cybersecurity strategy. Weapons like dark web monitoring, email backup, and security awareness training. And it's not because we like having to maintain multiple tool sets, and it's not because we want to sell you more stuff. The truth is that hackers are an extremely clever bunch, however misguided they may be. And so it's important to have a complete set of armaments to be successful at fending off their attacks. In the times in which we live, where these kinds of attacks are happening and escalating every day, we think it's necessary to have a belt and suspenders approach to security. This is what we call a layered defense. It consists of layers of security tools, with the idea that if one layer doesn't catch the attack, the next one will, or the one after that. It's a good strategy and clearly one with a very positive intent. And in this particular chart, you can see that the security tools are applied at the perimeter. That would be where your network connects to the internet. That would be your firewall. At the network level, that's your internal LAN. At the endpoint level, those are your individual computers and servers. At the application level, so that would be things like email and web browsing. And finally, at the data level, which could include tools like backup and encryption. Now, in addition, effective security also means the development of policies and operational procedures, as well as ongoing monitoring and response. And just as an aside, for our managed services customers, we look after that piece, the monitoring and response. But the obvious question after all of this is whether or not this strategy is sufficient to keep your business safe. So let me start with the bad news. Unless you're a sole proprietor who has all of these security tools and protections, and you are super careful, even paranoid, about what emails you open, where you browse, it's unlikely you're going to stop a really determined hacker. We have a saying around here, some people will click on anything. And it's not intended as an indictment of those people. The vast majority of the time, they don't know they're doing anything wrong. But the fact that the intent is innocent doesn't change the result. One wrong click and an intruder could be in your network. And with that in mind, I'd like to familiarize you with the concept of footholds. However, since I'm not a hacker, I think it would be a lot easier if I let some real hackers explain the concept to you. DEF CON is one of the world's largest and most notable hacker conventions, held annually in Las Vegas, Nevada. By the way, these are not the hackers who want to bust into your networks and steal from you. These are what we call white hat hackers, who come to these conferences to learn what's going on in the hacking world so they can help protect you against the latest forms of attack. And what you're going to see now is a short video that explains how some of the more effective hacks work.
DEF CON is the biggest hacker convention of the year. It's a place where thousands of hackers come to hear talks, to demonstrate their newest hacks. It's actually a place that's so dangerous to be on the internet that they tell you to turn off the Wi-Fi and the Bluetooth on your phone, and they tell you not to use the ATMs too, because those could be hacked as well. This is the DEF CON ballroom. This is sort of the main room where things are happening, and it's pretty wild. I think this is Car Hacking Village. This car's locked. Can you get me in?
I'll unlock it for you. Should be good.
Hacking is no longer like this fringe activity, and if you are at DEF CON, there's a good chance that you're here because you want to learn what could happen to you or your company.
Anyone here first time in the SCCTF?
I invited Chris to hack me with his team, but they're gonna hack me using social engineering, which is essentially hacking without any code. They just use a phone and an internet connection.
We help people with human security issues by testing vulnerabilities for like a network test, but it's for the people network. We test those vulnerabilities, see where the holes are, and then help people learn so they can patch them.
Can we try some of this? Can we try some?
Yeah.
See if it works?
Yeah, we probably could have our star Richard here make some phone calls as
Let's do it.
Sure. Do you want to do a sample phishing call?
What's phishing?
Phishing is voice solicitation, and basically what you do is you use the phone to extract information or data points that can be used in a later attack.
Let's do it. Who are you gonna call?
Maybe I'll call your cell phone provider
Okay.
and see if I can get them to give me your email address.
I bet they're good. I bet they have my back. But yeah, go for it.
I'm gonna spoof from your number, so it's gonna look like it's calling from you.
Okay.
Hi, I'm so sorry. Can you hear me okay? My baby, I'm sorry. my husband's like, we're about to apply for a loan and we just had a baby and he's like, get this done by today. So I'm so sorry, I can't call you back. I'm trying to log into our account for uses information and I can't remember what email address we used to log the account. The baby's crying and can you help me? Awesome.
In just 30 seconds,
gmail.com?
Jessica gets my personal email address.
Now, if I needed to add our older daughter on our account so she could call in and make changes, how would I need to go about doing that? You would have to send me a secure PIN through a text message? Yeah, well, the thing is, I don't think I'll be able to receive a text message if I'm on the phone. Shh. Oh, I'm not on there either? So I thought when we got married, he added me to the account. Okay, my
Jessica
name
uses my girlfriend's name and a fake social security number
is 5127.
to set up her own personal access to my account.
Wait, I'm sorry, so there's no password on my account right now? Can I set that up?
She even gets the support person to change my
Thank you
password.
so much for your help today.
So she just basically blocked me out of my own account.
I'll get her fed after this. All right, thank you.
Holy shit. So they just gave you access to my entire cell phone account.
You're gonna have to go on and change your password now because it's Jess, my name.
And all it took was a crying baby and a phone call.
Yes.
I really thought that my cell phone company would protect me. I mean, like, this is the most basic stuff, and they're not doing it. And if they're not doing it, you know all these other businesses aren't doing it either. Anyone with a phone and an internet connection can do social engineering. But I was curious, what can a hacker with serious coding skills do?
Well, DEF CON is the world's biggest hacking convention. It's hacking everything. Hacking social, hacking hardware, hacking software, hacking various systems.
I asked Dan Tentler, a well-known security researcher, to turn all of his firepower on me.
I did get into quite a number of things that I found.
So what were the first things you did? How did you start hacking me?
I quickly found your Squarespace blog and had an idea. Basically what I did was created a bogus Squarespace site and sent an email to you, a phish asking you to go to this website, run the certificate installer.
And I did it, because
Yeah.
I'm an idiot.
So once you ran that, it gave me access to your computer, and I created several fake pop-ups that looked like system pop-ups that would ask you for your credentials.
You didn't even have to have my passwords.
No, you gave them to me.
I gave them to you.
Yeah. So I stole your 1Password keychain.
And 1Password is where I store all my other passwords. So effectively
And
by...
your social security number and your Amex stuff and all your stock trading and bank information. I can send email to everyone in this room as you. I am you right now, if I wanted to be. If my evilness is working correctly, it should actually be taking pictures of your desktop and pictures through your webcam every 2 minutes. And I have been watching you for about 2 days now. In coffee shops, at your mom's house, on a plane. Here's your editing stuff. There's you. Like,
Oh my God, so this is literally
every 2 minutes.
through my webcam.
Yeah, through this guy.
How badly could you have messed up my life?
I could have made you homeless. I could have made you homeless and penniless.
How? How would you make me homeless?
Like, I have control of your digital life in its entirety. I have all your credentials. I have all your access to all your financial information, all your work information, all your personal information. I can pay people with your bank account or your Amex account. I am you. I can fully impersonate. Like, the only thing I couldn't doctor would be like your fingerprints.
This is like as bad as it gets.
It's ridiculous. Yeah, it's bad.
So it turns out that Dan Tentler is very good at his job. I mean, he hacked the hell out of me. He got everything. I mean, frankly, I want to take my computer and throw it into the deepest part of the ocean, and I want to become a hermit, and I want to never touch a piece of technology again, because holy shit, that was everything. That was the keys to my entire life, and he just pulled them out of his pocket.
Okay, how is that for scary, everybody? Videos like that one are the reason we hold these webinars. It's extremely important for us to make our clients aware of the growing risks of cyber attacks and what they need to do to defend themselves. Now, what you just saw Dan Tentler do toward the end of the video is called a foothold. Essentially, it's a tiny little program that gets loaded onto a computer and is totally invisible to most cybersecurity tools. But from a remote location, a hacker can use it to steal your data, infect the rest of your network, install ransomware, or attack other networks, effectively turning your computers into zombies. I've actually seen this kind of hack demonstrated live at various cybersecurity conferences by people like Kevin Mitnick, the world's most famous hacker. And the machines that they've targeted, which are, by the way, they're lab machines. They're not actually targeting real people. But the machines that they've targeted have all had the latest security patches from Microsoft or Apple and up-to-date antivirus software, and they still get in. As I mentioned earlier, some of them were even Macs, which are supposed to be more secure than PCs, but unfortunately, as I've mentioned, that's not true either. In every case, these hackers were able to take complete control of the target user's computer within a matter of seconds. So here's a question for you. Have a look at the picture and tell me how many holes in the bucket are too many holes. Well, I think we all know the answer. The answer is 1. It doesn't really matter actually whether it's 10 holes or 1 hole, because eventually the bucket will be drained. And cybersecurity is a lot like that bucket. If you don't plug all the holes, something valuable will escape. Which is why what businesses really need is a layered defense, sometimes referred to as a security stack. And what that is a series of complementary tools that target very specific kinds of intrusions. Since no single tool is effective at defending against all manners of attack, only a layered defense can reliably keep you safe. So with that in mind, let's have a look at what should be in your security stack. And I think I mentioned all or most of these tools earlier, but given the importance of this subject, I think it's worth repeating myself. To be truly safe, you need to have a business-grade firewall that has been properly configured with up-to-date security services. You need to have commercial antivirus software, not free antivirus software. And if your antivirus does do anti-spyware, you need that as well. You should have email scanning and filtering, particularly if email is critical to your business, as it is to most businesses. I talked about the importance of having effective backup, dark web monitoring, and cybersecurity awareness. The biggest vulnerability in most organizations is people. And again, as I said earlier, it's not that people have malicious intent, quite the contrary. The vast majority of your employees only want to do the best they can. But some people are not aware of all the cybersecurity risks and are more inclined than others to click on the wrong things. That's why education is a key component of cybersecurity. And as it says at the bottom, more. So what do I mean by more? Well, that leads us into a discussion of threat hunting. What exactly is threat hunting? Here's the definition from Wikipedia. It is the process of proactively and iteratively searching through networks to detect and isolate advanced threats that evade existing security solutions. In a nutshell, here's the difference between threat hunting and every other security tool. Tools like antivirus, firewalls, email filtering, and so forth, these are all passive tools. That means that they sit and wait for a threat to appear, and then they respond by blocking or removing it, or at least we hope they will. Threat hunting is an active technology. It works by scanning your computers and networks, looking for hidden threats and alerting you if they're found, as well as providing instructions for removing them. It also identifies vulnerabilities in your defenses that could lead to a future attack. The threat hunting tool that we're recommending is something called Huntress. It was designed by a team of software engineers who previously worked in the cyber warfare departments of the National Security Agency, the U.S. Department of Defense, and the Air National Guard. Huntress does just what I described a few moments ago. It actively scans your computers and networks for vulnerabilities and threats. Think about one of those robotic vacuum cleaners that wanders around your home looking for dirt and picking up whatever it finds. Huntress is the cybersecurity equivalent of that. If and when it finds a vulnerability or a threat, it sends out an immediate notification along with instructions for removing the threat or the vulnerability in your system in the process. Like antivirus software, Huntress is a program that's installed on all of your computers. And in most cases, we perform that installation remotely, and it all happens invisibly behind the scenes. In the background, the response team at Huntress maintains a machine learning-based database of attack vectors that's constantly being updated to reflect the latest threats. If a vulnerability or a threat is detected on any of your computers, we immediately receive an alert along with instructions for mitigation. We then do two things. Number one, we notify you, let you know the nature of the threat and what we're doing to address it. And number two, of course, we fix the issue as quickly as possible. And best of all, Huntress has minimal to no impact on your computer's performance. Our aim is to keep all of our customers safe from cyber attacks. And frankly, that's a win-win for both of us. It keeps your company's data safe and your operations efficient and profitable. At the same time, it reduces the likelihood that we will need to invest significant time mitigating the disruptive effects of an attack or intrusion. As I've already mentioned, in our experience, the only really effective defense is a layered defense. What's the upshot of all of this? Very simply, it's this. A small investment in layered security can protect your business from a very expensive data loss or breach. Look at it this way. If your business has 20 users, you might pay something like $375 per month for security services. But remember the statistics I quoted earlier? A serious cyber breach could cost tens of thousands of dollars to reverse. And that's assuming you don't experience a significant exposure of confidential data, which could put you out of business. So what's the better deal? $4,000 or $5,000 a year for peace of mind, or $66,000 to undo a disaster? I don't know about you, but for me, the answer is pretty obvious. So what will an investment in these tools do for you? More than anything else, it will give you confidence that your networks and your valuable business data is safe no matter what happens. And since businesses are more and more dependent on their information infrastructure, that kind of safety is key to achieving peace of mind and letting you focus on growing your business. So thank you everyone for your time today. And now I'd be very happy to answer any questions you have. Okay. Well, there's a note that Linux also has viruses, and that is true. And if you have Linux infrastructure in your business, you definitely should make sure they have antivirus software and are equally protected. We have over the years detected and removed viruses and rootkits from Linux systems. Also a request for a link to the video, which I will be happy to post in the chat in a moment, or we can send it out by email. Here's a question. In your opinion, what are the most effective cybersecurity solutions? Well, I think that the answer really is along the lines of what we're talking about. Essentially, there's no one solution that's going to address all kinds of attacks and intrusions. You really do need a layered defense. Within each category that we've talked about, we have preferences. So, for antivirus, our favorites are for sort of a high quality standard antivirus. We like WebRoot. For a high-end antivirus, we're big fans of Sentinel-1 or Cylance. For firewalls, we like Sophos. We've also worked with SonicWall and Cisco Meraki. So, again, if you'd like a list of what we recommend category by category, please send us an email. You can send it to info@connectability.com or katem@connectability.com, and we'll be happy to reply with a list of those things. Okay, so another question. Why isn't antivirus software capable of locating and removing footholds? There are a couple of reasons for it. One is that a lot of these foothold programs don't appear to be doing anything threatening. And that doesn't typically raise any alarms in most antivirus programs. By the time they do anything harmful, it's usually too late. The other reason is that these programs, they change so quickly that most heuristic-based antivirus programs, ones that look for patterns, don't recognize the pattern. Huntress, by contrast, is designed specifically to look for this kind of behavior, so that's what it's good at. How do we go about developing security policies for our employees? Well, I mentioned when we got to that description of layered defense, if you remember the slide with a sort of a rainbow, part of the security process is developing policies and procedures. We have templates for many of those things. And if you're a managed services customer, we're happy to work with you on developing an acceptable usage policy, cybersecurity training programs, all of the things built around making sure that your employees are fully tuned into your security practice. Well, thank you very much, everybody, for attending. I hope you found this information useful. I agree it's somewhat scary, but better to be protected than ignoring these kinds of threats. So please stay tuned for future webinars. Not all of them will be on security topics, but they're all focused on helping you use your IT resources more effectively. So thank you again, everybody. Have a great and effective day. Wishing you safe computing, and look forward to our next event.